Has Boris's Brexit plan broken democracy?
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. Well, demonstrations are taking place across the United Kingdom, all against Boris Johnson's decision to suspend Parliament in the run-up to Brexit. Yes, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets from Manchester to Leeds to London and many other cities. Oh dear, it's getting worse. We've almost reached to the point of farce. And in fact, it's a petition which goes against the Prime Minister's plan has now reached over 1.5 million signatures. In fact, remarkably, yes, a former Tory Prime Minister, Sir John Major, has announced that he will also join forces against the anti-Brexit campaigner. And so it really just seems that as though the whole thing has just got very silly. What is the answer? It seems as though there is no answer. But maybe there is, and here's the Mark and Pete solution. Yes, finally, the Brexit conundrum answer. Once government seemed grand and splendid until Brexit came and common sense was ended. Then all of Parliament was soon suspended, and no more deals could be amended. For years, the EU relationship was befriended, and many felt the ties should be extended. But in stark reality, everyone simply pretended, and hopes of a resolution has transcended and descended. So many a political view has been contended, which none of the public have ever comprehended. So what's the answer no one has recommended? Well, sell Britain to Donald Trump and leave it all unattended. That's right. Forget about Greenland, Donald Trump. Why not buy the United Kingdom? And that will solve all of the problems. Well, Clergyman Pete, Boris Johnson has been a bold man, and he's prorogated, and he's decided to suspend Parliament. Do you believe that this is the right strategy, and do you think perhaps he's telling the truth about his plans?
Well, just comment on your poem. But Donald Trump might want to buy Britain, I don't know, but the EU seems to have had it for free. In fact, been taking money to have it for the past few years, with the amount of money we've been paying in.
Sell it to him, but I think £2.50 is more than ample.
Yes. That's a bargain. That's deal or no deal, Mr. Trump. Now, So to answer your question, which is about Boris Johnson's plan and whether he's being truthful, well, I think that the way that he's been working is not entirely truthful. It's difficult to say exactly what his aims are because he's saying he's heading for a deal. He really wants to get a deal. And yet some of the actions he's taken appear to be not doing that, but rather trying to blame other people for having the no deal. So it seems to me that he's not being entirely truthful. In fact, he can't be, because he said different things at different times. He said a no deal was 1,000,000 to 1 shot, and then he started planning for it. Which is the case. And of course, you do need to plan for a no deal. So, he's not being entirely untruthful. You need to have a backup plan. But this not being quite truthful, I think isn't the way to proceed. You see, I know politics is assumed to be like that, but I believe that if you believe in God, and I'm not sure where Boris Johnson leans in his belief in God, but if you believe in the God of the Bible says, for example, Proverbs 12:22, the Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. And again and again, the Bible talks about how God will bless the efforts of those who are truthful and trustworthy. Now, here we come down to it. Boris Johnson, yes, is stretching the truth, maybe lying a little bit here and there. But is he overall trustworthy? Well, in the end, we don't know. What he's promised, his absolute main promise, is that Britain will leave the EU on the 31st of October. And if he's truthful, the test of whether he's truthful is if we leave, and it's not a Brexit in name only, Brino as it's sometimes called, some sort of reheating of Theresa May's withdrawal agreement, but rather we actually leave, whether or not there's a deal. If that happens, he's been overall trustworthy with some little lies. But what I'm saying is that God blesses those who are absolutely committed to being truthful. Now, you can put different emphasis on things. No, that's absolutely fine. But you must be truthful in what you do. And so that's my answer. I think the Boris Johnson's plan could be absolutely brilliant, or he could be the bumbling idiot that we've always assumed him to be.
Well,
we don't know yet. We don't know.
Oh, well, let's take the latter, because there'll be many people who will agree with your latter comment. So Shadow Chancellor John MacDonald and Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott both addressed all of these protesters, particularly in London. And some of the comments were made by Mr. MacDonald said, Boris Johnson, this is not about Parliament versus the people. This is about you versus the people. And when he was speaking near Downing Street, Miss Abbott then told the protesters, we cannot allow Boris Johnson to shut down Parliament and to shut down the voice of ordinary British people. Essentially saying that they're proroguing the idea of holding Parliament essentially in a delay tactic so that they can't vote him down and have any say in Parliament is really not the right strategy. Now, look, we can talk about the technicalities of whether he prorogues is a good thing or a bad thing. The point, I think, behind this is Boris's strategy the right thing for the United Kingdom? Is it actually now we've reached a point where if we carry on being attached to the EU, this is causing more uncertainty, as we've said many a time, and I'm coming from a business perspective, businesses can't plan. If they don't know what they're going to do in terms of legislation, tariffs, or any other kind of arrangement, it's impossible to think long term. And as we all know, the Mark and Pete mantra is to think long term and about localism. But the principle of this is that we now need to start moving forward, and we need a clear position. Yes. I think that, and again, just to conclude, that actually this would be actually a good thing for both the EU and the United Kingdom if we now actually came out of the EU and we could then trade on World Trade Organization, WTO rules. And whilst I know that's not an ideal situation, we then actively are out, and we then have to actively do a deal back with EU nations. And then businesses can get on with doing what they do best. Because at the moment, they're hampered. And we're now at a point where jobs are being lost. We're seeing businesses having to muddle with their stock controlling and their warehousing, and they still do not know the situation over things such as people who want to travel. What's going to happen to those people, say, for example, who are British expats who are living in Spain? Are they going to be people who can still get state benefits or not? Are they going to be left high and dry? And we can cover many other topics, but the point is now it's reached a point where this whole matter is stifling society. Yeah. So Boris Johnson, if you believe that this strategy is going to work and get us out of Europe, then go ahead. That's my concern.
Well, yes. Now, we were theorising before we went on air, Mark. We were theorising it is possible that Boris Johnson is brilliant, or maybe it's him and his advisors and colleagues
of course
have a brilliant strategy. Well, it can't be just him, but yes. It could be that he's behaving in a way, and he's got that he's going to produce this effect of having a clean break Brexit or no deal Brexit on WTO tools, which, as you say, new WTO rules, which of course now, as you point out, that's the best position to be in. Now, let's just briefly rehash and say, well, look, if when the negotiations started, it had actually been put to the EU, we are prepared to leave on WTO rules and put believable measures in place at that point, because remember, 498 MPs, nearly 500 MPs, voted to leave on with no deal, because it was either a deal or no deal. That was in the Act of Parliament, which accepted that Article 50 would be the route by which we left the EU. Either these MPs didn't know what are really stupid and didn't know what they voted for. That's possible. Or they're just using this as a political stunt, and probably there's a mix of the two. But Nothing has changed, really. Nothing's happened yet. That's the problem. Nothing has happened in between. Boris Johnson coming in now puts in that what should have been always done, this idea of a no deal, leaving as being a bargaining chip. He's used it to try and force the hand, because people in the EU have been talking to him. They said they wouldn't. Yeah. So he's made that. He's made his mark. Now, if he's being clever, what is his strategy? Well, the strategy could be, now, Mark, you and I are extremely clever, so we are able to sort of theorise what might be happening if he's following this clever plan. Now, what he could be doing is not expecting the EU to come up with some changed deal. There's an argument that there wouldn't be time to pass it through Parliament, even if
indeed,
even
and
if
that's
he
what
did.
most people believe.
Yes. So if that's the case, then what he's doing is ensuring that he keeps enough people on board to keep the time going and going and going, getting all the Remainers against him, doing machinations in Parliament. All of it's a smokescreen. All of it is a diversion, because as the clock ticks on and on and on, he gets to the default position, which is we leave. But the blame, instead of going on him, goes on them, because if they put in delaying tactics, if they're making protests, and the having the slight delay, the short extra proroguing of Parliament has been a brilliant strategic move, bringing them all together. So it may with their spoiling tactics, trying to get something through Parliament, which I believe is in process, with the House of Lords being prepared to stay open next weekend as we record this. To try and pass a law stopping Brexit. Look, with all this happening, he's going to come out as the hero, whatever happens. And when he goes to the country, he's going to win a general election. It seems to me that if he's being clever, which he might be, then that's what he's doing. And we're going to get the no-deal Brexit that we, at this stage, is the best option.
Well, I mean, politics is all about calculation. And we know that Boris is, certainly an experienced politician. I do want to bring one matter which possibly could backfire. And this is the proroguing situation, which has put the situation where the Queen, that's the Queen of England, has now really been forced, or perceived to be forced, to go with this option of proroguing Parliament. And now some people are saying, well, actually, no, technically, what Boris Johnson has done is not put the Queen in that situation, because it ultimately is the Prime Minister's choice. Yes. So it's not the choice of the Queen, other than that if she were to usurp him with her sovereign powers. But that's really not something that a sovereign would normally do. So I want to ask the point about whether, irrespective of the outcome, has he also perhaps sort of lost a lot of supporters as a result of going this route, what is perceived to be putting the Queen in an ignominious position?
Well, I don't. I've heard people say that about it, putting the Queen in a bad position, but I don't see that as an issue, because I think there's two things. One is people, as a general rule, I observe that the people who would be for staying in the EU wouldn't be actually staunch monarchists, so that they might not be as seen as problematic. But also, those who are bothered by it would be people who were, if they were bothered at all, would be people who were Remainers anyway. The people who are on his side are pleased that he's involved the Queen in this, having Queen has been one of the good guys, if you like,
yes,
or good girls. So I don't see it as because I think that opinion will go with the Remain Leave lines anyway. I don't see it as being an overall issue. But what I do, just to comment on whether she's been put in a bad position. It wasn't really in that case. I mean, he would have advised her. Official advice can only come from the Prime Minister, as the only person who's allowed to give official advice to the Queen, official advice. But in fact, he wouldn't have been there. It would have been the Privy Council who actually were with her, and it was done in an official way, perfectly normal thing to do. in preparing for the Queen's speech. So there's absolutely nothing abnormal here. But I take your point that the perception is blown up by these Remainers is that he's done that. But for people who want to leave, to the ardent leavers who make up a majority in the country now, we know recent surveys have shown, I think that people are on the side of using parliamentary procedure to make sure we just get out. I see a rising tide of let's just leave, let's just get it over with in the country.
So, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, just to close out the point of the constitutional threat, said in a media interview, the idea this is some kind of constitutional outrage is nonsense. So he believes that actually this is just, again, propaganda from opposition.
I think that's right.
Who believe that actually this is just something that Boris Johnson should never have done.
Well, I think that they're right in that it would have been an outrage if he had said, well, I'm going to prorogue Parliament for a month so that it takes it into November. Yes. Then we would have been in a constitutional crisis. But there is time for them to debate before and after the conference of the EU on the 17th and 18th of October. So I don't think there is that issue.
No. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, many of those who oppose Boris Johnson believe, and we've seen that Jeremy Corbyn has said, well, what are you hiding, Boris Johnson, by the idea of proroguing Parliament? Yes. By reducing the time in Parliament, that I think this is, again, a little bit of a red herring. People are definitely completely politically opposed, but I do actually think at the end of the day, if we can get to a situation where we are completely out of the EU club, this is going to put us in a much better position long term. It will be rocky. It will be difficult. Listeners, what do you think? I mean, do you believe that Boris Johnson is doing the right thing? Maybe you've got actually a different approach. Perhaps maybe we're going to be heading for some issues over the next few weeks. What do you think the outcome of Mr. Johnson's proroguing? Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, this subject is going to rumble for some time, and we're all with bated breath hoping that it all goes well. Well, join us next time for this subject and more colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.